We are live. Hi, everyone. I don't know if there's anyone on yet. Please say hi if you are on so that we can see you. Okay, I think will start, hey, Jen.
Oh, yeah. Let's start.
Okay, so thank you to everyone who is checking in and watching us as we talk. And my name is Mabel, and I'm the marketing manager at Feenix. And oh, hey, someone out there said hi. Feenix said hi. Now I'm talking to Jen. So Jen, I wrote out your bio. It's very impressive. She's a writer, feminist, activist, and a researcher. She has worked with the Rape Crisis Cape Town Trust, Parliament of South Africa, the United Nations Children's Fund, the Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation, and she was appointed a Commissioner for Gender Equality in 2019, where she served until the end of January 2020. Hi, Helena. How are you doing? Thank you for checking in. And so you are here with us today to talk about your book that just came out called The Fall. Got it right here. Have to say that it is a great book. I read it in one go, and that's like I don't usually finish on Saturday night. I just was so excited about it. It's really a great book. And if you can, you should get a chance to read it. Hi, Bongi. How you doing? Yeah, so today we're going to talk to Jen about The Fall. So basically, the similarities that Jen's book and Feenix has is that we are both have Fees Must Fall protest as a springboard. So Feenix was started as a Fees Must Fall movement because we saw that there was a gap and that we believe that access to education should be available to everyone, regardless of whether they've got money or not. So Jen, maybe you can start there and tell us a bit about The Fall and what it's about.
Cool.
And also why you wrote it.
Why? Okay. So The Fall is a novel, firstly. It's not a work of nonfiction. So it is a story about several characters set at the time of the Fees Must Fall protests. Two of the protagonists or the main characters who we get to hear from are students themselves. We also get to hear from the South African president, the Minister of Police, a parliamentary content advisor, and a range of other background characters who sort of influence the way that things play out. It's set during the Fees Must Fall protests because I think those protests revealed so much about the two types of stories that we tell in our society around truth and power and also what we spend our money on. So it was very interesting to me that at that time when the protests were happening, there was this narrative of this would be completely unaffordable. Students are asking for too much. And then at the same time, our president was refurbishing his private home and we were spending money on a fire pool without a hose system and all of this sort of crazy stuff. So I was very interested in the different types of truth that were being told and about who was being silenced and who was also being affected by police brutality. So obviously many of the people who were telling us that story were journalists, and I fully believe in an independent and free media. I think they are vital to our democracy. And so one of my characters is also a journalist. I wrote this book because I am a fiction writer. I spend a lot of time researching and writing academic research type papers, but I loved the stories and opinions that came out. So my 6 characters all have very strong opinions about what these protests mean, what they can change and what they can't change. And I noticed that type of story in society, like everyone had an opinion about the protests, the Fees Must Fall protests. And I wanted to try and balance out some of those views and explore what it might be like to tell a story where we were set in a sort of weird reality. It was very much South Africa that we know it, but there's a lot of speculative, twisted elements. So to have a bit of fun with the story as well.
Yeah, so also one thing that I'm actually interested in is, so there are 6 first-person narrators, right? So each person talks from their own point of view. So my question to you is why you chose to go that way? Yeah, maybe you can start with that. I've got another question after that. So also just a pre-thing is that I actually never knew you wrote fiction. I have like your nonfiction work, but I never even like the peculiar. So I'm not sure what type of form that is. Because so I've got them here actually. So okay, so my first time, this is actually how my first introduction to you was via the tweets. So Jen basically with this began off with a series of tweets and then calling people to share their stories about their first time, and it's mostly women and marginalized people that share their stories. And then from that there was a blog, and then from the blog came this. And I think this is all like people sharing their own stories from their own perspective. And then if you look at Living While Feminist, it's the same thing, right? It's a collection of stories. I mean, a collection of essays. And everyone has got their own voice. And then this is the same. So maybe we can talk about, it seems like you believe in the power we have with our using our voices and our owning our stories.
I absolutely believe in that power. I think we are very easily swept away by broad narratives around what things mean in South Africa, what a moment means, what a protest means, what a president can mean. And the only way that we're able to see whether that overarching narrative is true or not is to ask people and to allow them to tell their stories firsthand. So my first time was very much an experiment with asking people to tell their first-hand stories of their first-time significant experience, whether it was sex or owning a car or getting married, and to try and take away the power of an overarching narrative to silence experiences that were different. Feminism is, and Living While Feminist were similar platforms where people were asked to submit stories on what feminism meant to them, what it means for their bodies, what it means to live in the world as a feminist. Because I think for a long time, for too long, there was this idea that there was one right way to be a feminist, and I don't think that that's accurate. So that was the reason for that, to explore different types of feminisms, different feminist ideals. In the fall, I gave each of the 6 characters the same amount of chapters, the same amount of voice, because I think too often our public narrative prioritizes some voices over others. And as much as I disagreed with, some of the government characters in my book, and even some of the actions taken by the protesters in my book, I wanted them to each have a chance to tell the story of what the protests meant to them. So I think it's important that we respect people's truths and we engage with them critically and relate them to the overarching story so we can get a more holistic picture.
Yeah, definitely. So Hlasetso comments that telling one's own story, their own voice, words is so important. And that's one of the things I liked about the book. And also this is on the Feenix platform. So how it works is we don't want to tell people stories because we're just taking away their own agency. So the students on the platform, they own their story. They're able to come on, create their own platform, share the story. So they share whatever is comfortable with them. And then that is the story which they then share with their community so that they're able to crowdfund and get people to contribute towards their fundraising goals. Because I think that's one of the things that we thought was very important, because we get so many people who want to speak for other people. And I think that could be dangerous. And also having one voice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm so interested in feminism and in human rights and social justice. And I've not really been interested in being the voice on that. I think there's been times when the discussion has been quieter and my voice has been very loud, but by no means do I think that I'm the only person who has an opinion. And, I'm not the only person who can put together these collections. Like anybody who wants to put one together themselves, please do. I would love to read it. I'd love to be the person buying the book. And if you want advice on how to do it, because it is a bit of work, please ask me, because I think that's the other thing about putting your voice out there, is the ability to share information, to learn, to avoid making the same mistakes that other people have made before us, and to try and do a bit better.
Yeah, and I think also maybe one of the things is many people are scared of just starting and just like putting yourself out there. And I think that's maybe what you've done, is that you have put you've given it a try and you're doing it. So I think everyone, and I think also the students also, maybe like, I know some students are scared to just start and put their profile on, but then if they know that I need to put myself out there, you never know unless you try, right?
Yeah, and also I think there's a lot of sometimes when you're asking for help, it's really hard, especially if you've been told that it's your fault for needing help in the first place. And I think when you're asking for financial support, it's really important to recognize that the situation that you find yourself in financially is not a marker of shame, or it's not a marker of your character. The system is designed that some of us flourish and some of us fail, and the only way to change that system is to ask for help and to challenge the idea that everyone can afford to go to university, which is a narrative that people like to sell, but it isn't true at all.
Yeah, because I think in the book, Hector has a T-shirt that says "Too rich for nurses, too poor for fees, and too black for a bank loan." And I think for Feenix, our many of the students that come to the platform are the missing middle, because they can't get nurses, and even this idea of academic excellence, or even there's some studies, some faculties which are more likely to be supported. Like no one cares about the arts. I feel.
Is that?
Yeah, so maybe you can share with us your personal journey at university. Like, I mean, like when you wrote this, did some of these parts, were they like from your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, I went to university. I'm the eldest child in my family, so we're a family of 3 women, and it was the first of us 3 to go to university. My mom was a single parent. She was working an ordinary job, and it meant that this would be a huge financial endeavor. So we qualified for NSFAS in my first year. I had an NSFAS loan, I think, for 2 years. I had bursaries, I had student loans. Luckily, my aunt was able to stand surety for me, which was something people don't think about, is you can't get a loan if no one can pay it if you don't, if you mess up.
Yeah.
So I think one thing was important for me to recognize was that if you're struggling financially, the fear of making a mistake and of messing up is huge. It's so much huger than someone who knows that if they make that mistake, they'll easily be able to register for a different degree or try something else. So I went to university. I had planned to study journalism. I sat there in the first month and I realized that that wasn't actually the way that I wanted to tell stories. And it felt like such a huge ordeal to phone my mum and say, I really want to change my course. This is going to have financial implications. And the scale of that feeling was bigger because of those financial implications. I went to Rhodes University, where we were accommodated in residences and where our meals were on a booking system. And there were times when I unbooked meals because it felt like a good way to pay off some of the student debt, and I knew that I could get a toasted sandwich for like, I'm a bit older than I look, but I could get a toasted sandwich for like 10 Rand at the cave, and I could get 20 Rand back for my meals, and that would go into the student fee. So it really was a constant feeling of just making it. From my second year at university, I was a tutor and I had a number of waitering jobs. By my master's at Rhodes, I was working 4 jobs, and I was on. I managed to get a bursary, and so my fees were paid, but my living expenses weren't. And sometimes those living expenses are an invisible cost. I think the Fees Must Fall protest did such a good job of bringing stuff like sanitary dignity to the fore. And making people aware that, like, even if your school fees are paid, that doesn't mean you can afford to eat. That doesn't mean you can afford a tampon. That doesn't mean you can afford to go to the doctor if you need that help. So, yeah, I think I drew on some of those invisible moments in my own experience to bring those characters to life. I mean, even in my second year, I was a sub-warden at residence, which is a paid post, so that helped. But in the week that we came back to university, we were all a week early so we could set up the residences, and they didn't open the dining halls, and they hadn't told us that they weren't going to open the dining hall. So I hadn't bought money to pay for food, and it wasn't readily available in my home. And so, it's one of those things where asking for help, you feel so different from everybody else. And I think that's why the protest struggle is a weird thing, was a reality.
I lost you for a bit there, like your last sentence, I think. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Technology. I was just saying that I think why I found the process so important and what I drew on for the development of my characters was getting rid of the idea that being financially insecure was, you were the odd one out, because I think it is a reality, and silencing those many people who were struggling was not something that I wanted to do in my storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And I think, so we did a research that was done by Kwela agency. We commissioned it in February, and we got such interesting stats. And that's just because sometimes people, when they hear these stories, they don't resonate. They need to hear the numbers to back it up, So one of the stats that we got was that beyond tuition, students are severely impacted by lack of critical resources. That's food, accommodation, and data. And 78% of students worry about finances on a daily basis. And there's a correlation between financial stress and academic performance. And 41% of student studies were delayed, with 50% of them stating lack of funds as the reason for postponing their studies, which is like so mind-blowing to think about it. That it's not just fees, and I think also one of the actual lines that I really like here on page 10. So guys, you really need to get this book. It's really, really good. It feels like our manifesto. Like it feels like this carries the spirit of what Feenix is about, So it's got this part here. Okay, so Hector, so this is at the beginning, so I'm not giving any spoilers away. Hector is one of the main characters, and he's a student, and he is missing middle. His fees is paid by his aunt. So he says, you get into varsity for 5 minutes before you realize you're out of your depth and out of pocket. 3 years of austere with his aunt, fancy high school, and all her money still didn't equip me for that, or for the hidden costs. You think it's fees and done, but then it's photocopies and printing and student cards and societies and exam fees and food and a residence keys. And before you know it, what sounds like a fortune feels like pocket change. And I think that's the reality that many students are struggling with. And I think that's the same thing that Clasetto is sharing here.
And I think we don't, in terms of life skills at school, we talk about sex and reproduction and a career, but you don't talk about how to balance your money. So, I had, in my first year in my holidays, I had a job. I have been working since I was 14. I had a waitressing job since I was 14. So I was aware of like what money could buy you. But for many young people going to varsity, it's the first time that they have to budget and do any of that stuff. And you do want to be a part of societies. You do want to join the things on campus that will build your community and, eventually advance your career possibly. You don't want to miss out on everything. But the huge background stress of whether you can afford it and, it's as simple as when I went to a private high school also on a scholarship. And there were times when everybody was buying the tracksuit to go on like the school tour or the band camp or whatever. And I could never have the tracksuit. And it was like a small thing, but it does make you do want to be able to just fit in that way, especially when you're at some new place. So yeah, I think Hector's story was, as I said, I'm older than I look. So when I started at university, it was in 2003. There was the internet, but a very few of us had a computer in our room. We used the labs and we made a lot of photocopies, and that was really expensive. And was a thing where I just thought that the other thing is that it's fine for a man to stay in the library really late at night because it's safer. But for many of us female students, it was terrifying to think, okay, I'm going to have to walk home in the dark. I must either spend all my money on these photocopies and skip out on having any sort of social life, or I can stay here in the dark and hope that I make it home okay. So it's, we live in a really complicated country and world. I don't think we should buy the narrative that there isn't enough money for everybody to study safely and freely.
And I think also when you're talking about the photocopying, I think when in this study also, one of the students said that access to laptops, because you get assignments, so to type them out, you have to go to the labs or computer labs, and then sometimes the computer labs are full, and people sleep there, and so now if all those people who use the computer labs now during lockdown, you wonder what's happening to them. How are they able to access? Because now everything has gone online, and using your phone is not like it's not possible. It's not the same. So I want to actually do like a quick little challenge. I think I told you about this earlier on. It's the Cap the Gap challenge. And everyone who's listening, if you can please join in with this. So basically, you just need to take your phone, or wherever you are watching this, go to the message board, and then close your eyes, and then type, no, you're not cheating. Close your eyes and then type in hashtag Cap the Gap challenge.
It doesn't work.
Oh, what'd you get? Yeah. So Jen typed Cape the GPA. Yeah, the GPA.
And I can type that. That's so embarrassing.
No, and I'm interested, like if anyone out there, if you also did it, please share your responses with us. So this shows that you know how to type, you know how to spell the words, but when you're given a task, but you don't have the resources to do it, you will fail most times, or it's going to be a struggle. And this is the reality for so many students right now. And I think this is why it's so important for us to sort of put a spotlight in what they are experiencing, that those of us who can play our part and help them if we can.
Yeah. I mean, I liked what you were saying earlier that I don't think we've touched on about the idea of academic excellence. So I performed very well at school. I performed very well at university. And sometimes when you are the top performer, or people think that you are bright enough, they assume that you'll get by. Like they don't take into account your real life. They just think, okay, she's fine. She understands the material. She'll write the essay. It will be fine. But they don't think, okay, how will the essay get written? Where will she print it? Will she be able to get it safely? So there's a need for a broader, a life cycle map of what it takes to get through university. And now as well, one of the things that we all should really be thinking about is the cost of data and who that's including and excluding.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so people are sharing this. Bongi said Vab. So Caro Jero, yeah. And Natasha said Dao the Gao. Yeah, no, it's really tough. So I think, knowing this, and also when we did our stats, over 47% of the students, this was before lockdown, they already say that they do not have access to data and laptops. I mean, it's a huge, and now we're moving to the fourth industrial revolution, and we need to do something. And that's why actually we started the Cap the Gap campaign, because we, like so many students who have come through so far, they've gone through so much, they survived university so far, then their last year, or they're doing their postgrad, and now there's a chance that they might fall through just because they don't have a laptop or don't have data. And so that was one of the campaign aimed to help as many students as we can, so that they are able to get those resources that they need. And so far, I mean, like, the community has been amazing. And I think this is one of the things that I see in your books, all of them, the collaboration, the power of collaboration, and what happens, what is possible when we all play our part. Because like the problem might seem humongous, but if we all play our small parts, we can make a huge difference. And I think, but that'll be a spoiler alert, because even in your book, right, like they sort of have to, I don't know what to say. Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, asking for help is not something that I find easy to do. And I think that comes with help feeling like you some sort of failure. And that is what systemic inequality tries to make you feel. Structural inequality tries to make you feel like you are the mess up, you are the failure. But this catch in the system is built this way. It's built on inequality. It's built on trying to make some people fail. And we have to ask for help and to be vulnerable and to tell our stories so that the narrative that, you know, it's your fault that you aren't succeeding is dispelled. And that it becomes easier to ask for help. So yeah, if that's one message I can have is really like apply for everything, apply for as many bursaries, write your profile on Feenix. If Feenix had existed when I was, you know, finished graduating or a student, it would have been a life and a game changer, because it would have meant I was able to tell my story in my own words and people could see that I really wanted, you know, I think like every student, I really wanted to do well and to succeed and to put my degree to good use. So
yeah. And also, I think one of the most important things that people like, I think I mentioned it a bit, like they focus on STEM and like this is the future, and like the Bachelor of Arts are sort of on the wayside and people don't see it as important. But as you are proving, we need the dreamers to write the future we need.
Yeah, I mean, the arts are incredibly important. They are a source of archive, they are a source of storytelling, they are a source of community. And if you look at the fourth industrial revolution, writing skills and the arts are going to be critically important in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of UX, in terms of understanding how the tools of the future can work for ordinary people who are not maybe digital natives, who've maybe grown up without the internet. You know, like some of the people who may be listening were born after Facebook. Many of us lived before Facebook and the internet. Like, I mean, again, my friend was the first to get the internet, and she had a dial-up computer at her home, and I can still hear clearly the sound that used to make, you know, like that was reality. But we can't leave people behind is the story. We have to bring everybody along, because a future that is as unjust as the one we're living now is no good.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites, one of the speeches where Cindy was talking, and that speech, so she's talking to the older generation, I'm assuming, and she says, "You fought for us so we could meet our potential." Because she's saying people might think that ungrateful for protesting, and says, "You fought for us so we could meet our potential, but the fees here mean that so few of us get to use that potential. The bright minds don't want to leave here. We want to stay and build on the foundations you laid, but we need to study to do that, and we need your support to make that chance of studying a reality." And I think at the end of the day, I'm like, it's about our future, right? Like we need to invest in our future, and we can't just sit back and wait for someone to come.
No one is going to rescue us, you know, if those fairy tales of, you know, some white knight coming in. Firstly, we know that men are not going to save us. The patriarchy is going to limit that success. But we know that we have to save ourselves, and in order to do that, we have to be honest about our situation. I went to a TED talk, a TED Women event a few years back, and Sindiwe Magona was one of the speakers. And she was talking about how often when you are driving in a car and someone comes to beg at the window, you feel this great sense of sorry for them. You feel sad for them. And she said, stop feeling sorry for them. Feel sorry for us. Feel sorry for South Africa, for the many people who have potential and haven't been able to meet that potential because of structural failings in the system. And it just sort of blew my mind, because it's true, you know, when you think of a student not being able to graduate because their fees aren't paid, you think, oh my gosh, that's terrible. They've made all this effort. But you're not thinking, oh, flip, we might not have the best COVID pandemic virologist. You know, we might not have the person who changes the vaccine, you know, develops a vaccine for HIV. We are losing out every time we let people slip through the cracks. It's not only sorry for them, it's sorry for us too.
And this is something that we saw with this. I think I told you when we were talking earlier on about this girl, TD, who was trying to graduate, and she had historic debt and she would not get her certificate. And she studied something in the medical discipline, and she tried for 2 years and she was unemployed. Then she finally got funding via Feenix, and within like 3 weeks, she got a certificate. She was working for NCID, and it's just like, if we give people the chance, I'm like, and she's now working at the front lines and helping us deal with COVID. And we almost had a chance of losing out on her and many people like her. Yeah. So I think we are running to our end. And the last question I want to ask you is, so I feel like in your book, like all the characters want to be agents of change somehow. And so how there's this future that we all dream of. It's very idealistic and all that. What do you think the role each of us has in playing to get that future we want?
I think the most important thing we can do is to set those future goals. I think we spend a lot of time in South Africa talking about criticism and what's going wrong, but we don't think enough about the future that we want to build. So I think ask yourself, what is the future life that you want to live in? That if you're going to have kids, what you want your kids to live in, and map out some of the things. Sometimes in monitoring and evaluation, they talk about a problem tree. What are the problems? And if you had to turn them on their head, what would you have to do to get there? The second is to tell your stories and to share them and to talk to people who are different from you. I don't think, it's a function of capitalism, it's a function of sexism, it's a function of racism to make you think that other people aren't like you, that you can't relate to them, and that just isn't the truth. The truth is that we're all human, we all have dreams, we all want to do the best thing. So, building community is really important, and I think support Feenix if you can afford to. Support Feenix if you can't afford to. Send it on to people you can, whether it's people you applied for a job at and you didn't get that job. and just remember that it is absolutely not your fault if you are struggling financially. It is part of historic inequality in this country, and asking for help can be a game changer and a life changer, and we need you to do that.
And also to help is to assist a student on the platform. It's not like you don't need to be rich. And there's the power of crowdfunding, that you get 100 Rand or 50 Rand, or if you want to go bowling, 10,000 Rand, like whatever you can afford, every cent makes a difference. I think that's the most important thing. And I just want to know, does anyone who's watching have any questions? Is there anything they want to propose to ask Jen? I don't see anything. Okay, but so if you have any questions, you can maybe they can comment here and then you answer them later on.
Yeah, they're welcome to comment. They're welcome to check out my website. It has my Twitter details, my email details. My life has been changed by education, and I know that I was lucky because people helped me out. So I would love to help out anybody that I can, or to put people in touch. I think, reach out.
Okay, all right. Neo says no questions. Thank you, it was informative. Thank you so much, Neo. Natasha says, thank you for the insightful discussion, Jen and Mabel. Thanks, Natasha. All right, thank you so much. And looking forward to your next book, and telling everyone here, you need to read this book. It's amazing. Yes. Oh yeah, and also, this other book also came out like at the beginning of the lockdown, or
beginning of the lockdown. Then there's this older one, Feminism Is, just a book promo.
Yes, and you can get them at any of the good bookstores, or you check out the Kwela website. Yeah.
Online. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Bye.